So wherever you're listening, if you are in your winter wonderland, or you're in a snowless capacity, wherever that might be, you're very welcome along. Right, we will have a monologue by Giles Whitehead now from Westmoreland. I really love Giles's monologues. I know you do as well. Has a very deadpan way of telling stories, which is very much one of my favourite ways of orating things like this. He grew up on a small dairy farm in Kent in the 70s. He's an artist, and he went to the Kent Institute of Art and Design as well in Maidstone. And this particular piece of work is called Christmas on the Farm, and it's just Giles's way of telling it. Let's have a listen to Giles's experiences in the 1970s of Christmas on the farm. Here he is.
Winter on the farm could be very cold. But the farmhouse had an array of log and coal-burning fires. I actually used to lean right up against the park rate, and I'm surprised I didn't set myself on fire. But luckily I didn't, although I possibly slightly melted my polyester school trousers. One of my jobs on the farm was to litter the buildings on those cold and dark winter evenings after school, spreading a new layer of clean straw across the cow barn. My mum was captain of the Tenterden bell ringers, and for that reason she became the custodian of the church handbells at Christmas. December was the time of year when members of the bell ringers would come to our house and practice, and as soon as I was old enough I was included in the band, and we'd spend the weeks up to Christmas practising in readiness to go and tour around some of the local pubs playing carols. I do remember thinking at 9 years old that I shouldn't really be in here, and then one chap offered me a cigar, but it was the 1970s, and the things you could joke about were probably a bit different. One thing that got me most excited for Christmas was the arrival of the Hawkins Bazaar stocking fillers catalogue, and I would enthusiastically examine each page for squidgy faces, rubber monsters, generally small cheap rubber things that I absolutely loved. You could fill in the order form at the back and post it off with a cheque. During those same weeks when my dad came in from milking the cows, he would have his supper of bread, dripping and cheese. He would then begin the seasonal event of the icing of the Christmas cakes. I would sit and watch, entranced for hours, as these amazing creations were revealed. He would start by marking out the geometric design on tracing paper and then pricking through onto the smooth white icing with a pin. First, the white lines, pushed out through an ancient metal icing set that was kept in a very old chocolate box. Over the week, the cake would evolve, and more intricate patterns and details added. Lastly, it was the final flourish of the flower nozzle. My dad was a master in pressing out the uniform designs, one after the other, and then placing a silver sugar ball into the centre of each one with tweezers. But that wasn't the end. My dad still had to ice 2 further cakes for my grandparents, and I never got bored of watching the process. It was tradition on Christmas Eve that we would visit Auntie Nancy. She lived in Mansion House in Bindon, and me, being very quiet, would just sit and stare at these 3 cloth ornamental owls that sat on a table. They had these hypnotic embroidered eyes staring back at me, and I would just look at them fixated, whilst my parents had long conversations. But Auntie Nancy was always very cheerful, and it was nice to get that extra present ahead of schedule. We were only allowed to put up the Christmas tree on Christmas Eve, and lots of time was spent checking the fairy lights to see which culprit was stopping the rest from working. Despite living on a farm with 25 acres of woodland, we still used an artificial tree from Woolworths. That evening, stockings were put out on the end of our bed. We'd pick out one of my dad's large boot socks from the drawer. Laying it over the end of your bed, the excitement was such that you thought you would just never get to sleep. But somehow you did, and you woke in the morning to feel the lumpy present stuffed sock, and to find that yes, Santa had drunk his sherry, eaten his mince pie, and the reindeers had munched their way through some carrots. As soon as it was close to a civilised hour, I would check with my brother, and we'd go to our parents' room to open them. Being on the farm, everyone was used to getting up early to do the chores, and of course Christmas Day was no different than any other for the animals. You'd have to go out in the cold, break the ice on the water trough, weigh out the food and pour it in as a barrage of heads appeared, calves hungry for their Christmas breakfast. which was the same as any other breakfast, but they didn't seem to mind. When Dad finally got in for breakfast, we'd sit and wait impatiently for that moment when we were allowed to open the main presents. Throughout the year, dinners were always cooked on the Rayburn, which was a log-fueled oven. It was routinely lit every day, but on Christmas Day, we had to get the electric oven going too, because the turkey wouldn't fit into the Rayburn. And so after my grandparents and my Aunt Joan arrived for the sumptuous turkey dinner and flaming Christmas pudding, it was time to pull the crackers, where I was always pleased to get the fortune-telling fish, which was a tiny sheet of red cellophane in the shape of a fish. I was easily pleased. But when you put it on your hand, it would curl up or flip over, and with the additional sheet, these movements could be translated into your fortune. Very exciting, you know. It's actually a genius idea for a cracker prize that has endured. But that wasn't the end of the excitement. There was one final crescendo that took the form of indoor fireworks, which were a little bit like a science experiment gone wrong, but the anticipation was everything. The most memorable firework being the cobra, for when you finally set the thing off, it would erupt into this grey, twisting, expanding, snake-like mass. You just can't beat that.
Christmas on the farm. Thank you so much, Giles Whitehead there from Westmoreling.
Very talented artist he is. He has new work at the Greenfinch Gallery in Ticehurst in Sussex, as well as a new solo exhibition that's just opened in the Cranbrook Library Art Space in Kent. It runs until the end of December. Really evocative, brilliantly created art from Giles. You can go and find lots of the pictures of his artwork on social media. If you go to Instagram, he's at Giles Whitehead Artist. You can also find him on YouTube and Facebook at exactly the same handle. Thank you, as always, Giles. Just brilliant to have you on the show.